Okay, so we're now starting the second chapter of Megilas Esther. And again, just to remind from where we were last week, a few of the first of all, methodologically, what we want to do is look at this text, look at what's happening here, as well as the story that's happening. What are the deep lessons, deep structures that are going on? And in particular, the way the Gemara and the Midrashim see, as well as others, see what's happening in the story. So what we saw last week is that the opening chapter is called Tokva Shel Achashverosh. The Gemara describes it as really the power or the dynamics of the story based on Achashverosh. And that opens up to us the possibility that, in fact, a very important part of the whole story is going to be the tikkun of Achashverosh, how Achashverosh gets turned from somebody susceptible to tremendous amount of destructive behavior that could even lead to the complete destruction of Taliso, and how he's going to be turned around in the story. That's an important element that we're going to not see fully for a few chapters, but just again, lay out the picture. We're going to see another aspect of Achashverosh that was seen all the way through, the fact that he represents everything the Yetzer is, looking for money, looking for wealth, looking for fame, and most importantly, looking for approval. He does not have a state of mind that is not fake, that is not prefixed. In other words, his public demonstration of his state of mind is never genuine. It's never who he really is. He's always insecure. And that's where the Yetzer lurks, where all the drives and passions and things lurk. And we saw how, therefore, Memuchan manipulated him when his wife wouldn't appear in public and essentially turned this made a fool out of him to the public, but in his own little ego world, managed to convince him that he was doing something noble in defending the male population. Now we start this. After these things, right? So there's a gap, right? We always know that Achar versus Acharei. That means there's a gap in time. And in fact, historically, if he is Xerxes, then this is very likely to be the point in his kingdom when he went to Greece and had a disastrous war. And in those intervening years, as we'll soon see how many years there are intervening, he's probably lost all confidence. But either way, now, if you just want to translate in a way that works, you will say, when Achashverosh had calmed down, Zachar Vashti remembered Vashti as Kolasha Asa, so all she'd done is Kolasha Nigzala, all that had been decreed. But of course, as the Medrash Rabbah points out, the ancient rabbinic midrashic texts point out, Ka really means like. It's like he's calmed down. He has not calmed down, right? He can't calm down. The man is sorry. Hello? The man is so deeply insecure and so paranoid. He's probably spending his entire time nonstop thinking about this. Was he humiliated too much? Did he really get the right impression done? So it's like he's calmed down. He's managed to convey the impression of being calm, but he's not calm at all. That's where he is now. And that means that everybody close to him gets the fact that he can't let go of Vashti, right? But there's a problem here. He also cannot try to engage in any relationship with a woman again because he's too insecure now and he's completely going to be humiliated. So what do the people close to him who always understand him say? So that all the guys close to him, one of them will say, they say this, we'll basically, as with everything with Achashverosh, we will create a facade. We will pretend, we'll play a game. And what will the game be? The game will be we're pretending we're looking for a wife. Of course, he can't live in a permanent relationship with anybody, but it doesn't matter. At least he can finally do whatever he wants to do and have his pleasures and so on, whilst creating a public veneer or some kind of facade that makes it justifiable. Right? We're going to have these Ephesus spread out across the entire empire. And right, sorry, it just lost place. Yeah, they're going to look for every single person, potential candidate who's good looking. To the women's section of the palace compound, which was, again, archaeologically, you can see exactly where that was, into the hands of yeah, they're going to be there. And they're going to have all their perfumes. And this is all under the guise of pretending that we're looking for a queen. Yeah. And the king and Achashverosh thought this is an amazing idea. And of course, this is exactly what's going to give him permission to engage in a way that can never threaten him. because anybody who's in there will never be able to report what they've seen to the public. They'll never be able to resist him. And he gets all these this opportunity. Next, and the Medrash points out this is exactly the style of all over Tanakh. We raise a problem, we raise a situation, and then we enter the person who's going to solve it. So now, Ish Yehudi, or people in this case, Ish Yehudi, Hayah b'Shushan Abira, there was a Jew in Shushan, the capital, Shmai Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish Ish Yemini. His name is Yair, son of Shimi, son of Kish, a man of Yemini. That's quite a lot of generations to put in. It's an interesting number. And the Medrash has different ways of analyzing. The simplest is we're relating to the major families, the major people he came from. And of course, the top of them all is Kish, which implies that he is in fact, Kish is the father of Shaul HaMelech, King Saul, who was the only king, well, the only universal king for the whole of Israel from the tribe of Binyamin. And that's where he comes from. And of course, Shaul HaMelech, as we pointed out last week, was the man who had failed, who had kept Agag in the world that now we're suffering from in this story. So many, many little hints over here. But of course, the Gemara points out, how can he be Ish Yehudi, a man from Yehuda, and also Ish Yemini, a man from Binyamin? Right? That's a contradiction. And there's different answers given. The simplest is Yehudi at that point was a generic term for Jew. Like the southern kingdom of Yehuda was the surviving kingdom. So everybody, whatever tribe they came from, was actually a Yehudi. The Gemara also says we use the word Yehudi there. We use that word in Tanakh to mean a kofer b'avodah zarah, somebody who unifies God's name in the world and denies idolatry. Okay, so that's going to have some force. The other aspect, it could be part of his family. He had lineage from Yehuda, part from Binyamin. And why is that relevant? Because that was always the issue. How can we keep the Jewish people united? How can we keep particularly Yehuda and Binyamin? So you'll see that David HaMelech, right, or even though he's been told he's going to be king by the prophet, by the Nabi Shmuel, by the prophet Samuel, he won't accept the kingship until everybody can unite around him, and particularly the tribe of Binyamin. So something about Yehuda and Binyamin have to be together. And so he is married to Michal, son of daughter of Shaul. He makes the Beis HaMikdash, he picks Yerushalayim because it's exactly between Binyamin and Yehuda. And in fact, the Beis HaMikdash itself lies exactly between these two tribes. So there's an implication here that we can only survive the challenges we're facing if we can unify all the parts of the Jewish people. And we're going to see that will, of course, become central. So long as we're fragmented, we are vulnerable to destruction. Now, at this moment, nothing has actually happened that will destroy us, but we're in the shadow of a national catastrophe. We're still, according to the Gemara, in the Churban, the Beis HaMikdash have been destroyed. And we're going to see that in the very next passage, why this is so important that he's trying to link Yehuda and Binyamin. Because Asher Hagla Yerushalayim, who had been exiled from Yerushalayim, with the exile that had been exiled, Im Yechonia Melech Yehuda, all the way back to Yechonia, king of Yehuda, Asher Hagla Nebuchadnezzar, who had been exiled by Nebuchadnezzar Melech Babel, king of Babel. Now, how many times do you have to mention the word exiled in one pasuk? And there's different interpretations in the Gemara and Medrash. But one is this, that he in fact gone into exile twice. What was the story? He'd originally been a part of the original exile. And then when they'd given permission, Koresh had given permission to start the rebuilding in Yerushalayim, which was between Yehuda and Binyamin, Ish Yehudi, Ish Yemini, he'd gone back there with them. And we see in Ezra that the story of indeed a Mordechai. And he goes back, and now we remember the story there is that the locals created a problem. You know, what is this Jewish nationalism coming into the land and taking away from the locals here, right? There's something that never changed in history. And we need to fight, and we not only have Yerushalayim, we can't have Jerusalem. And in fact, the international community, the Persian Empire in those days, their United Nations, blocked the Jewish people from building their Beis HaMikdash. And Mordechai came back. He went through the second exile in order to lobby for the rebuilding of Yerushalayim. So you would call him the pro-Israel lobby or the Jewish lobby, like in modern day terms. But either way, that implies, and this is something we've seen as a backdrop of the entire story. Shushan is trying to become the alternative to Yerushalayim. That's we saw that they were celebrating the party, Achashverosh, of, the 70-year prophecy has come to pass. We're not being rebuilt. The only two places called Bira are Yerushalayim, where the Beis HaMikdash is, and Shushan HaBira, and so on and so forth. All the little hints that we had last time, that he's wearing the Kohen Gadol's clothing, high priest clothing. By the way, amazingly enough, The link between the whole Purim story and the building Beis HaMikdash is absolutely central, because this is a story of a war against an Amalekite attempt to destroy us. And the halacha is you got to first get rid of Amalek and then can build the Beis HaMikdash. The Rambam codifies that exactly in that order. But most importantly, we say, just there's a parallel between the way that Mishnah Nichnas Av, Mamatim the Simcha, as Av comes in, you drop Simcha, Adar comes in, you increase the Simcha. So Av is all about the Churban and destruction, and Adar is all about joy, but obviously there's a parallel. Somehow the story of Purim is the story that's going to carry us through to the full building of the Beis HaMikdash in this story and its message in the future. And this is something we saw last time. The Yalkut Shimoni quotes the idea that in the future, all the books of Tanakh will be gone, but Purim is the one that drives us all the way into Olam Haba, all the way to everything. So we're picking up some amazing hints and little subtleties here that are indicating there's something new. We don't even have a problem yet of Haman, and we're already dealing with the real issue, which is that in the world of Achashverosh, how do you rebuild a Beis HaMikdash? In the world of a fellow so insecure and so threatened, how's he ever going to allow the Jewish people properly back and build a house of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that will just make him relegate him to number two? It seems that we're stuck in exile so long as we're left with Achashverosh the way he is. And Mordechai has within him some of the answers. Now, of course, the story is not about Mordechai at this stage. It's about what's happening next. He has been looking after Hadassah. She is Esther. So which is she? So the Gemara discusses which is a Persian name, which is a Jewish name. Most opinions seem to say that Esther is the Persian name, which actually makes sense because it's a kind of, it was a popular name of Persians in those days. Some even in the non-Jewish world, they used Ishtar, which was actually a name of what they believed was a goddess, and the Jews changed it to have a similar name, but wasn't the same. Esther Bastoda, Ki Ein La'avein, because she didn't have in the past, she has no father and mother, which implies she's never had. Her essence is that she doesn't have. And the Gemara, in fact, says, yeah, that means that her father died straight after conception, her mother straight after birth. Why is that important? And she's very beautiful. And when her father and mother died, Mordechai took her as a daughter. There is, of course, a very famous view in the Gemara that can also be read as a wife, right? But whichever one it is, certainly the only thing she has in life is Mordechai. It was when they heard the words of the king and his law, and when many of them were gathered to Shushan. Now the words here are very subtle, but between the lines you can pick up something very important. Obviously, as the Gemara says, the Medrash brings, nobody was coming forward after Rosh put out his decree. No, everybody understands what a monster this guy is. And certainly self-respecting women were not volunteering. And we compare that to David HaMelech, who even, he wasn't necessarily looking for a wife. Everybody was lining up for him. But now they have to be gathered forcibly. So there's a second, first there's a proclamation, no one comes. Then they start really gathering everybody to Shushan the Bira Yad Hega Beti Lokach Esther. She was taken. Again, very clear. There's no volunteering here. They go into all the houses and they find her. Okay. And immediately this man who's in charge of this operation sees something about this woman, about Esther. She just finds favor in his eyes. By the way, this is very, very similar to another person in Tanakh who always finds favor in everybody's eyes, and that's Yosef HaTzadik. Also is taken against his will, also is placed in the palace. And there's many, many hints we're going to see through the story, but both Mordechai and Esther end up playing some very similar roles to Yosef. Now, by the way, that's not a coincidence because they're both Bnei Rachel. They're all children of Rachel Imenu. And in fact, every fight the Jewish people ever have against Amalek is always done through the children of Rachel. In the Midbar, in the desert, the first attack, who has to go and fight them? Yehoshua bin Nun from Ephraim, from Yosef. Later on, it's Shaul HaMelech. King Shaul has to go and fight them. David HaMelech doesn't really have any particular instruction to fight Amalek. In this story, it's going to be Mordechai and Esther. Long term, the Medrash talks even generally to get out of the Golus, the exile of Esau's descendants, is the same family. It needs Yosef, Mashiach ben Yosef. So there's something about that lineage, something going back to Rachel Imenu, right? There's going to Rachel, right? It's going to be central in the battle against Amalek. What is it? So we're going to see a little aspect of it and a first attempt at an understanding that will emerge in this parak, in this chapter. And as we're going to see, our natural assumption about it is going to be wrong. But I'll give you the clue right now. It's going to be the word sneers, right? Which generally is translated as modesty. And we're going to see that this chapter looks like she's incredibly modest in one understanding of sneers. But we're later going to discover the word sneers really means holding something back in reserve. Something is hidden that can emerge. And that's what the very name Esther means. That which is concealed, waiting to emerge. Even the hadassah, right, which we know in halacha, the hadass plant that you use on sukkahs. So it's covered by leaves on all sides. So it's something hidden. Okay, but let's get on with this and see. There's so many deep things happening. We're just touching lots of surfaces over here, but in Yad Hashem, we'll be able to uncover some aspects. Again, anyone who's got a question, just feel free to unmute questions or comments or anything's not clear. Okay, so she's found this favor, and she refuses to. She doesn't want to have any of this. So he hurried. So he hurried. He was mavahel. He like a behola, like a rush. He rushed Tamrukel. So we'll get to in a second to what she does. First, he's just trying to rush all the fragrances and all the cosmetics, and he's already given her the 7 maidservants that you normally get for royalty. In other words, he's skipping the queue. This one is the one the king has to get to. There's something about this one that's different to everybody else. And of course, the Gemara picks at the remez of the number 7. She particularly picked 7. She wanted to say, you know what, stop at 7, because she wanted to use one for each day of the week so she could keep Shabbos. So there's hints going on. It's never said explicitly, but it's like many of the things in the story is being hinted at. And so then he moves her with all of these maidservants. It's to the best part of the women's quarter. Now you want to know, the only thing we know about Esther at this stage is she will not tell who her people are, anything about her birth. And by the way, in this sense, there's a benefit to the fact that she has no family. And nobody knows who she is. They can't trace her. They can't look in the records. They can't, can everybody, who your parents? I don't have any parents. She's got nothing. So she's this mystery. But Mordechai had told her she cannot. And again, if you're just looking at this story, you think she's just this very obedient princess, or not princess at the moment. She's nothing. She has no personality, no identity. She's a blank slate. And Mordechai just imposes upon her this silence. Again, later in the story, we'll see this is not the case. But in a moment, this is how it will appear. And every day Mordechai is going there outside the courtyard. He wants to know is she at peace? What's happening? And by the way, the Medrash says, you go looking after, you care so much about one person, one captive effectively, you'll eventually come to lead the Jewish people. Teach us a deep lesson that we'll see play out later in the Megillah. Mordechai, if you'd have asked Mordechai at this stage what's the most important things he's done in life, he's fought for kindness. So he's a Nobi. He's on the Sanhedrin. He's a prophet. He's one of the chief judges. He's fighting for the building the Beis Hamikdash. He cares about this niece who he's raised. Maybe it's his own wife, but the way he cares about it, that's the most central thing of his life. And the Medrash says, yes. So often we're going to see this theme. Things you don't think are important are the things that change everything. We'll see that come out later on. In fact, that's going to end up becoming, if not the central theme, one of the subparts of the main principle of the entire Megillah. Okay. So when it came to each girl's turn to have the treatment they'd had, it was a whole year long, because that is how the prescription was. 6 months of the oil myrrh treatment. You can see what they're trying to do here. They're literally trying to, I don't know what, they're trying to create the most incredible experiences of the king. 6 months in perfumes of Samruka and Noshim and all the cosmetics. And she could come into the king like this. Whatever she wanted, right? She wanted to come with musical instruments, with anything. That's what they would do. This was to give Achashverosh his entree into womanhood in a way that will just be full of, he'll see them once and that's it. So this other comes, she comes in the evening, but when Baiki Shabbat in the morning, she goes to the second harm. So she never goes back to the first one. So nobody will ever know anything about Achashverosh. This is, again, you see the twistedness of his mind and the power of his paranoia and the way they manipulate this entire thing as a game around him. Of course, there's no interest in ever seeing his queens. He's not even trying. But he just one night here, next over there, and never to be seen again. To Shashkas to Melech Shem production, she's never allowed to get into the king. The king particularly desires and calls her by name. And when it comes to Esther, who's the daughter of Avichail, the uncle of Mordechai, again, Doid can be multiple relations. So taking her as a daughter, or possibly as wife, to come. She did not bring anything. There is no apparent assertion of herself at all. Whatever Hagar says, so she'll do. Once again, Esther finds chen, some kind of charm, something that brings a liking beyond anything that's automatically deserved. To have chen, something happens that makes people feel not threatened, that makes them willing to be vulnerable. And that's what happens. She has, again, just like Yosef Atabi. But in Lokach Esther and Melech she's taken. She doesn't go herself. She's taken out based on Chodesh Syria and Chodesh Teves. The Gemara talks about that. Month is important. Okay, but either way, in the 7th year of his king. So now we realize there's been a 4-year gap, or at least a 3-year gap between the first incidents and the beginning of this process. But Esther he loved her more than all the women, but usually Noshim means married women. But there's charm and there's kindness in front of him, like from all the unmarried women, never married women. He immediately changes. And what was a facade becomes real. Something happens to Achashverosh, and what was never intended to be real, he doesn't bother seeing anybody else. This is her. Puts the crown on her head, and immediately makes a queen. Bingo! The thing that was never meant to happen happens. The Gemara says something amazing. Things Rav says in the Gemara, in Megillah, that why would we describe us better than all the married women and there's the virgins and what's going on? It's whatever he wanted to imagine. She's someone with experience. She's someone fresh. He could see. In other words, she's so, well, there's one way to understand the Gemara, she's so non-assertive that he has no threat whatsoever. She's whatever he wants to be. So Achashverosh feels completely confident. It's like she's coming. Something about her is so non-threatening that she's the only person Achashverosh can imagine himself with. And he immediately sees, this could be it. This is amazing. This is something I can have. Now, of course, but the problem is her very non-assertion will suddenly become an issue for him. I'll tell you soon what the Vilna Gaon says here, because this will completely change our whole understanding of everything. But let's just go a little bit further. Now comes something strange. What appears to be a set of non-sequiturs here. The king makes a great party for all Sarah Avodah, for all his officers and servants. As Mishta Esther. It's called the Esther party. It's a tax break. That's what he's been doing from the beginning, throwing parties and cutting taxes. Right? Also, but Yitin masses go the other way, and then he's giving out welfare. And it's like a modern democratic leader will cut the taxes and somehow will raise all the spending. Someone else will worry about the debts later. And then he gathers more women. What? I thought you just finally found your queen. But Mordechai sitting at the king's, what's that got to do with anything? Esther won't tell who she is. What are these things got to do with one another? Mordechai said, Esther does everything Mordechai says. Just like when she was with him. Now let's pause and see what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, you see, Esther's non-assertion is fantastic, but part of it is the very fact that she doesn't come with an already existing strong identity. So nobody knows who she is. In the beginning for Achashverosh, that's fantastic. But then remember who Achashverosh is. Mr. Paranoid. And he starts thinking, 1 second, what's going on? Why is she not revealing who she is? Could there be a plot here? Is there something that if I discover it will destroy me? And in his paranoia, he's saying, I know, maybe she's from some disgraced, race, and she thinks everyone will it'll be very unpopular if they all discover she's. So I'll make her the most popular person in the whole town. We will have Esther parties, Esther tax breaks, Esther welfare states, Esther this, Esther that, Esther the other. Doesn't work. And then what's Mordechai Yeshub Shamelech? He calls Mordechai and says, come on, you're the Jewish guy who's always got great advice. Let me ask you this. I've got this bit of a problem. What would you say about a woman who refuses to tell who she is? And of course, Mordechai, he knows exactly what's going on. He wants to give her relief. He says, you want to get her jealous? Bring the other women in. You'll see. She'll talk, right? And of course, within that are many dimensions. She's really a spy. She can't afford anybody else to be in there, right? So, of course, he's giving Esther a break. And that's the captivate. So once you realize that, the whole story suddenly flows. The Megillah is often written like this. It says things, and it's giving you a little hint that there's a deeper story here. And once you pick it up, once Chazal give it to us, the whole thing makes sense. So there's this whole little crisis happening in Ahasuerus's world. And this is going to be essential to the story on many, many, many levels, because Ahasuerus is going to be obsessed with getting Esther to reveal the truth. And she's going to hold it in until the exact moment when this revelation will transform him. And in doing so, say kindness, I'll say the Jewish people. But right now, it's in reserve. Right now, it's in a place of tznius. Right now, he's not fit to see it. And this, by the way, the Gemara says, Rachel Imenu is the tznius. The lineage is Rachel Imenu. Rachel, our mother, she was so tsanua, so modest. Why? And he tells the story, the very famous story of Yaakov Avinu, when Yaakov came to Lavan's house. So he sees her straight away and he says, don't worry. He tells her, they see each other, they see prophetically or directly, whatever it is, they see there's something meant to be here so strong. And she says, according to the Medrash, yeah, but you'll never get past my father. He says, he tells her that I'm your father's brother. And the Gemara says, of course they knew who they were, cousins, right? But he's saying, I can outsmart him in crookedness. Oh, you can't, because he's going to put the older daughter, he'll never let us marry. And of course, that's why they make signs and codes between them. Nevertheless, the plan fails. Yaakov works, he's ready to sit down and marry her. And during the feast, so there's no chance for anyone to intervene, Lavan quickly puts the veiled woman over there. He's locked Rachel up in the house. Leah's, in fact, sitting there, the sister. And on the way, Rachel realizes she's powerless to do anything. So she whispers in Leah's ear and she says, we have code words. Here they are, right? Because why can I ask, maybe they halachically already been married, or by the convention of the town, be already married. It would be too late. Didn't want to embarrass her. Who knows? I mean, not who knows. This is a discussion. But the point is that that's called tznius, the Gemara says, modesty. Caring about the other one's dignity. And now you can ask, why is that so modest? I was so modest about that. They just whisper in her ear and say, by the way, it won't work because we've got codes, right? Yaakov and I have a code. It's going to fail, right? So I once heard, I quoted last time, Rav Weinberg, who's sure I used it a lot to understand the Megillah. He said, an amazing thing, he said, no, that would reveal to Lavan the depth of relationship between her and Yaakov. And that would cheapen the relationship. And so she's holding it hidden, even if she'll suffer as a result, because there must be the right time for it to emerge and the right place and the right context. It's not for everybody to see. And that's the essence of tznius. There are certain things that must be held in reserve, waiting their moment to be revealed. It's not just submissiveness. It's something much more powerful than that. And we see that with all the other examples. The Gemara goes down the lineage of Rachel, Shalom, and of King Saul, who didn't reveal that he'd already been told he's going to be king. Right? Okay. So, but again, it's not the right moment. It's not the right time. Somebody has to reveal everything, every moment to everybody is somebody who misses the whole concept of what tznius is. There's things that are so precious and so vulnerable. They must be held in reserve. And those people who are going to appreciate that depth will eventually bring them out when the time and the place is right. And this is the power of what Esther is right now. And it's creating a little crisis for Ahasuerus. But okay, everything's moved into position. She's in position. Now we've got to get one more in position too. By Yom Mahim, and by the way, now I'll tell you the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon is an incredible thing. He has different levels of explanation of the Megillah. He has a pshat, a straightforward understanding, and then he has the derech ha-remez, the hinted level of understanding. And in the hinted level of understanding, it says that, as I said last time, Ahasuerus is like the Yetzer Hara. He's like all the negative impulses of the human brain, the reptilian brain, all the kind of stuff that we have. And Vashti is like the body, like the Vashtas literally means the windpipe. She behaves exactly like the body does, that's totally subject to all the whims of the primitive drives of the human. And so she's going along with this whole also eating, drinking party, about to make herself terribly undignified. And at a certain moment, she turns around and realizes, 1 second, this is all animalistic. This is tails and scales. And she rejects it, but it's too late. By that point, the body can no longer resist. It just gets killed by the very yetzer, the very drives that have taken it too far. Esther is like the body that follows the neshama, follows its soul. It's an incredible thing. The person can have all their neural networks with all the mess of human behavior, with all the insecurities and fears that need medicating and drugs and short-term, more money and more holidays and more this and more that. They can't ever quite medicate the deep insecurities. That's what Vashti is. Esther is the body that switches, and its true husband or true relationship was with Mordechai, who represents the neshama. We'll see how this works. So there's a part of us can switch and say, you know what? I'm not trying to control my little world. I'm trying to hand my world over to God and his will. And I'm going to listen to the part of me that is deeply connected to God's will. I want to listen to that voice. And at that moment, the negative drives are trying to find their way in. They don't even speak in the brain. It's like they're speaking to a stranger. It's like you don't hear them anymore. A person, says the Chovos HaLevavos, who's in a place of real trust of Hashem, doesn't hear the ordinary voices of the animalistic drives. They actually go silent inside them. They don't hear their insecurities. They're not trying to control anything. They're not like Achashverosh lost in this world of control and paranoia, and Esther and Vashti lost in this world of paranoia that could be destroyed. They're actually impervious to it. And in the right time, they will eventually be able to rectify those drives too. So this is unbelievable. We hear the resonance with these characters, and they're playing roles that occur inside each one of us. Let's just finish the chapter. In those days of Mordechai, Yoshev b'Sha'ar Melech. So Mordechai, who represents the Neshama, right? He's sitting at the king's gate, the gate of the king. Kotzaf, big son of Sarah, Shnei Sus HaMelech. This, of course, the last time we had a Kotzaf, someone getting angry, was when Paro got angry with his servants, and that allowed Yosef to rise up. This time it's the other way around. The servants, this Medrash says, gets angry with the king, but that's also going to allow Mordechai to rise up and Esther eventually. They want to send their hand against King Achashverosh. There's many times the word shlichus yad, sending hand, is used in Tanakh, but the first one goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden story. Again, I've pointed out, I'm not going to go through it in depth now, but another time we will point out in Yetz Hashem how this story links all the way back to the Garden of Eden. We saw a few hints last week. Just remember this one this week. As Hashem, in future weeks, we'll discuss this a little bit more. But Mordechai was known to Mordechai. Megilas Esther Malka, he told Esther the queen. She told the king in the name of Mordechai, from which you have the famous teaching, whoever says in the name of the person they got it from brings redemption to the world. Was sought. They looked on the patrol lists and the guard. They found a time when they were not there and covering for one another. And it was found by Talush, and they were both hung on the tree. It is recorded in the Chronicles before the king. And of course, we know how this is. All these different elements are going to play themselves out in the 7th chapter of this story. So now we've moved everybody into position. Esther is in position. Ahasuerus has made her queen and then suddenly become deeply insecure about her. Mordechai is in position. And now we're ready. As exactly everything about Megilas. The solutions are all there before the problems even begin. We think we're working directly on how to bring the Beis HaMikdash back. We are, but it needs a problem first that's going to shatter the entire story. And only when that problem brings about all the changes it brings can we actually bring the Beis HaMikdash. We cannot bring the Beis HaMikdash, even with Esther there, even with Mordechai there, until Haman enters the scene. Amazing. Anyway, that is some of the beautiful ideas that could come out through the Gemara, through the Midrashim, through some of the Mepharshim, especially the Nagan. And we see quite a lot. Are there any questions in our last few minutes over here? If you do want to ask, you have to unmute yourselves. If not, then happy to finish right over here. Okay, I hope this has been a fabulous journey through the Megillah is just so incredible. And Be'ez Hashem, next week we'll see. We'll see the layers build upon each other in each chapter, in each parak. And suddenly hints that in one come back into the other, and we start to pick up an entire different dimension to this whole thing. But we're laying some very important foundations over here, which will all become central as the story goes on. And as we learn from here, how to bring about Gula, actually how to literally bring redemption to the whole world. Hashem shall help us all to be able to do so. We'll see whoever wants to be with us next week. As Hashem. See you all.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.